the Democrats, apparently Third Way, and other right-wing Wall Street-funded groups that pretend to be centrist and the media pretend are centrist. Uh, I guess they did an autopsy, even though Biden won. They did an autopsy of the 2020 election, and shocker, it's raising alarm bells. Raising alarm bells. This is from the New York Times. Colin, if you could bring that up. The headline Democrat report raises 2022 alarms on messaging and voter outreach. Oh, if only messaging and voter outreach were the core problem. Democrats defeated President Trump and captured the Senate last year with a racially diverse coalition that delivered victories by tiny margins in key states like Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin. In the next election, they cannot count on repeating that feat. A new report warns a review of the 2020 election conducted by several prominent Democratic advocacy groups has concluded that the party is at risk of losing ground with Black, Hispanic, and Asian American voters unless it does a better job presenting an economic agenda and countering Republican efforts to spread misinformation and tie all Democratic candidates to the far left. The far left. The 73-page report was assembled at the behest of three major Democratic interest groups: Third Way, a centrist think tank. It's not a centrist think tank, it's a Wall Street funded propaganda farm. And the Collective PAC and the Latino Victory Fund, which promotes Black and Hispanic candidates. I'm going to go further down. In part, the study found Democrats fell short of their aspirations because many House and Senate candidates failed to match Joseph Biden's support with voters of color who loathed Mr. Trump but distrusted the Democratic Party as a whole. So I want to zero in on that part, Jen. So the New York Times, or the report, thinks that one of the problems was House and Senate candidates couldn't match Biden's support with voters of color who loathe Mr. Trump. But that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what happened, because they weren't supporting Joe Biden. Like, they voted for him, but they weren't supporting Joe Biden because of some grand economic vision or because they believed in specific policies. They would have voted for a paper bag to get rid of Trump. I mean, that was the whole game. So this report seems to think that the Senate and congressional candidates just failed to match the support for Biden, when in reality, Biden's support was a mirage in the first place. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Biden's support is manufactured. He is, as we all know and remember, not doing so well before everybody in the primary dropped out and coalesced around him. And Bernie Sanders was essentially forced to drop out. And we all recall, the devastating devastating for Bernie Sanders supporters, at least. And here we are with Kamala Harris as VP and Joe Biden as president, neither of which were widely wanted in the Democratic primary. And yet they're the leaders of our country. And so, yes, I agree with your assessment to compare support to the support of Joe Biden among people of color is just a false start.
Right. A core argument about the economy and recovering from the coronavirus pandemic, one that might have helped candidates repel Republican claims that they wanted to, quote, keep the economy shut down. The party, quote, leaned too heavily on anti-Trump rhetoric. Quote, win or lose, self-described progressive or moderate, Democrats consistently raised a lack of strong Democratic Party brand as a significant concern in 2020, the report states. In the absence of strong party branding, the opposition latched onto GOP talking points, suggesting our candidates would burn down your house and take away the police. So this is obviously a bunch of nonsense. First of all, and they did this in 2016, that it was really about the messaging. It was really about the messaging, the lack of economic messaging. Well, you can't have strong economic messaging if you're not offering strong economic policies. People are no longer stupid. People read the internet. social media, look into candidates more thoroughly. So Biden didn't have an economic message. His economic message was restore the soul of the nation and all this. On the economy, he was against Medicare for all, which would help the economy. He said he was for a $15 minimum wage, but we've seen how that turns out. On, didn't say much on, raising wages, didn't say much on nothing on a universal basic income, guaranteed jobs, nothing really economic. So sure, you were going to get your voters that only cared about Trump and wanted to get rid of Trump, but you weren't going to get voters that actually needed to hear more on the economy. And because on the state and local level, the Democratic Party wasn't proposing anything economic, nothing populist, that's for sure. Well, on the state and local level, Democrats lost in the House a lot of seats that they didn't expect to lose. They lost in the Senate a lot of seats. They narrowly took back control of the Senate, but they lost a lot of seats. So it's not it's not rocket science. If you were for policies that are popular among progressives, among the entire spectrum, progressives, even centrists, a lot of Republicans are supporting raising the minimum wage, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, you would have crushed Donald Trump, and more Democrats would have won on the state and local level. So that's the reality of what's going on here. That's the reality of what's going on here. I hope. Does Jen hear me now or no?
I can hear you now.
Okay. So that's the reality of what's going on. It's not that they have no message. It's that they have no policies that they could send messages about. And even now, what is their economic message? We temporarily gave you some temporary relief. They're not halting evictions. They're not doing anything to actually structurally increase wages. The wages now are basically the short-term wage going up is because people have had unemployment benefits, so they don't have to go back to shitty jobs right away. As soon as you see those unemployment benefits go away, we'll be back to crap wages. So it's kind of not too difficult. It's not too difficult to figure out what's going on. But again, this is what the Democratic Party thinks. It's that they have no message rather than they should change their policies. To me, on one end, for the Democratic Party, it's a good thing. I mean, I don't particularly care if they win in the midterms. We see what they're doing now. But at least they're recognizing, no, the Biden win is kind of a sugar high. There's problems underneath the hood. But the problem is they don't seem to be doing anything to actually create an economically popular brand. They're not doing anything like he's abandoned the public option. He's abandoned the $15 minimum wage. His infrastructure bill seems dead on arrival. And the infrastructure bill, honestly, is not, to me, the highest priority in Americans' minds. He's doing nothing on the Green New Deal. As we're going to show you soon, they are not doing anything on these pipelines that are destroying the climate and Native American reservations. He's not really doing anything economically. They're just doing the same that they've done, which is unemployment, stimulus checks, which are all temporary, and it's ending soon. So there's nothing structural that Biden is offering. And on the Democratic House level, they're really pushing voting rights bills, which are good. But people, I can't stand James Carville, but once upon a time, he was right about something. It's the economy, stupid. People, in large part, vote with their wallets. And the Democratic Party hasn't offered anything, basically, I don't know, since the 1960s. So, yeah, I think that this autopsy is good, but from what I see, I don't see, they might recognize the problem, but I don't actually see them doing anything to change it. The messaging so far ahead of the midterms in fundraising emails and all this has been how heinous Marjorie Taylor Greene is, true, how Donald Trump is still a threat, how Republicans are, threatening democracy, even though we don't have a democracy. I'm not seeing any economic message for the Democrats. And, they deserve what they get, which will probably be a wipeout in 2022.